Hey everyone, these are the Converting Units guided notes. Let's get started. The first page of the notes is a conversion chart. This tells you things that are equal. Some of them you may already know, like 1 foot is the same as 12 inches. You may not know that 1 quart is 4 cups. This will be used as a reference sheet if there are conversions that you need to know that you don't know. Units are quantities used as standards of measurement. Units are important because there are different ways to measure things. For example, inches versus feet. So units would be like centimeters, meters, gallons, liters, miles. Many times in real life, converting units will be helpful. We are going to convert units using equivalent ratios. Recall that when we are setting up equivalent ratios, there need to be something in common both horizontally and vertically. Let's determine how many cups are in 5 quarts of water. To do so, we will set up equivalent ratios. One ratio will be the conversion between the two units. The other ratio will be set up using the information we want to determine. Remember to align common units. So right here is my conversion ratio. I am trying to convert cups and quart. So I can flip back to my conversion chart and I'm looking for one that's converting cups and quarts. And I can look right here and it says 1 quart is equivalent to 4 cups. So I write that as one of my ratios, 4 cups and 1 quart. Then I need to have common units. So if I have quarts here on the bottom, I need to have quarts here on the bottom as well. And then likewise, if I have cups here on the top, I need to have cups here on the top. So in the problem, it's asking me to convert 5 quarts. So I'll write 5 quarts. And then X cups is what I don't know. So that's my unknown ratio. So notice that everything connects. Units are the same here and on the bottom. And then I have my conversion ratio here and what I'm trying to figure out ratio on the other side. To determine the unknown value, look for the multiplicative factor. So there will be a multiplicative factor both vertically and horizontally. One might be more obvious than the other. In this case, they're both obvious. 1 times 5 equals 5. So 4 times 5 will equal X. Or I can also look here. 1 times 4 is 4. And then 5 times 4 will be X. In this case, it says the multiplicative factor between ratios, so between this ratio and this ratio, the multiplicative factor is 5. The number of cups in 5 quarts is, so I'm going to multiply 4 times 5, and that gives me 20. So there is 20 cups in 5 quarts. Now let's determine how many weeks are in 8 years. Set up the equivalent ratios with one ratio being the conversion ratio. So the units that I am trying to convert are weeks and years. So I need to determine how many weeks are in a year. And if I don't know that, I can go here to time. And let's see, I'm looking for weeks and years. And right here, 1 year is 52 weeks. So I'm going to use that as my ratio. 1 year is 52 weeks. I could also actually flip this ratio. I don't need to, but I can. It doesn't matter as long as I'm consistent with how I set up my ratio. So if I put years on the bottom there, I need to put years on the bottom here. And if I put weeks on the top, I need to put weeks on the top. So I know it's 8 years. And so I'll put 8 years and then I want to figure out how many weeks. So this is my unknown ratio, my conversion ratio, and then I have common units on the top and common units on the bottom. I'm looking for a multiplicative factor between these two numbers right there, and that will give me 1 times 8. 1 times 8 is 8, so 52 times 8 will be my weeks. So the multiplicative factor is 8. The number of weeks in 8 years, so 52 times 8 is 416. So there are 416 weeks in 8 years. How many millimeters are in 6 liters? Finish setting up the equivalent ratios. So here my units that I'm converting are milliliters and liters. So let's go back to my conversion chart. I'm looking for milliliters and liters, and that's right here. 1 liter is 1,000 milliliters. And if you look right here, they have milliliters on the top already written. So I'm going to write 1,000 milliliters on the top. I'll put ml for milliliters. and then 1 liter on the bottom. So this is my conversion ratio. I have the same units here on the bottom, and I have the same units here on the top, and then my unknown ratio would be right here. The multiplicative factor, what do I multiply 1 by to get to 6, is 6. I'm going to multiply by 6. That's my multiplicative factor between the ratios. So I multiply 1,000 times 6 and I get 6,000. So there are 6,000 milliliters in 6 liters. How many miles are in 2,640 yards? Finish setting up the equivalent ratios. They already gave me the conversion ratio of miles and yards. We can just double check on our conversion chart up here. So I'm looking for miles and yards, which is a length. So 1 mile is 1,760 yards, which is what is set up right here. So now I know I'm going to need to put miles on the bottom, and then I'm going to need to put yards on the top. It tells me that it's 2,640 yards. So I'm going to write that here on the top. And then my miles will be X. That's what I don't know. So that's going to go on the bottom. I need to figure out the multiplicative factor between 1,760 and 2,640. If I don't know what the multiplicative factor is, because I don't usually deal with those numbers, you can always divide. So you would take 2,640 and divide it by 1,760 and see what that gives you. If I divide that out, that gives me 1.5. So my multiplicative factor is 1.5. So I'm going to multiply 1 mile times 1.5, and that's going to give me 1.5 miles in 2,640 yards. How many kilometers are in 2,500 meters? Set up the equivalent ratios. I'm trying to figure out kilometers and meters, so let's go look at my conversion ratio if I don't know. So that is a length. So 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. So it doesn't really matter how I set that up as long as I'm consistent. 1 kilometer, and I'm going to write km for kilometer, is 1,000 meters. So there's my conversion ratio. And then I'm going to need to put meters on the bottom because that's how I set it up. And then I put kilometers on the top, so I need to keep kilometers on the top. So it says 2,500 meters, so that's going to go on the bottom. And then X kilometers on the top. So my multiplicative factor is right here. What do I multiply 1,000 by to get to 2,500? That's going to be 2.5. Again, if you don't know, you can always divide. 2,500 divided by 1,000. And so I'm going to multiply the top by 2.5. 1 times 2.5 is 2.5. So there are 2.5 kilometers in 2,500 meters. Practice. Set up equivalent ratios to convert the following units. How many centimeters are in 25 meters? So my units that I'm trying to convert are centimeters and meters. So let's go back if you don't know how many centimeters are in a meter. So 1 meter is 100 centimeters. So 1 meter is 100 centimeters. So that is my conversion ratio. And then my ratio to figure it out, so 25 meters will go on the top because I put meters on the top, and we're going to be consistent with my units. And then centimeters will go on the bottom. I don't know how many centimeters, so I'll just put X centimeters. 1 times 25 is 25, and so 100 times 25 is 2,500 centimeters. How many ounces are in 2.5 gallons? So my units I'm converting are ounces to gallons. So I'm going to go back and look. That is a volume. So I have 1 gallon is 128 ounces. 1 gallon is 128 ounces. That's my conversion ratio. Then I put gallons on the top, so we will keep gallons on the top. It's going to be 2.5. And then I put ounces on the bottom, so we'll keep ounces there in the bottom. And that's going to be X. I don't know the ounces. And then the multiplicative relationship, 1 times 2.5 will give me 2.5. So 128 times 2.5 gives me 320 ounces. So there are 320 ounces in 2.5 gallons. How many kilometers are in 5,500 meters? So my units are kilometers and meters. Back to the conversion chart if I need it. Again, 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. That's my conversion ratio. I put meters on the bottom, so we're going to keep meters on the bottom, and it's 5,500 meters. And then kilometers on the top, so we will keep kilometers on the top. And I don't know how many kilometers, so it's X kilometers. Multiplicative factor, 1,000 times what is 5,500, and that's going to be 5.5. Again, if you don't know that, you can divide. And then so 1 times 5.5, that's going to give me 5.5 kilometers. So there's 5.5 kilometers in 5,500 meters. 260 weeks is how many years? I've already looked up weeks and years. You can go look it up again if you need to. Weeks, years, that's what I'm converting. So I know that there are 52 weeks in 1 year. That's my conversion ratio. I put years on the bottom, so we will keep years on the bottom. And if you put years in the top and weeks in the bottom, that's fine, as long as you put years in the top and the next ratio. You just need to stay consistent. So I don't know how many years, so I'm going to put X, and then weeks will be in my numerator, 52 weeks, and then I have 260 weeks. So I need to figure out 52 times what is 260, and if you don't know, you can divide 260 divided by 52, and you will get 5. So 1 year times 5 is 5 years. So in 260 weeks, there are 5 years. If a male Asian elephant weighs 6 tons, determine how much he weighs in pounds. Set up and solve using equivalent ratios. So my units will be tons and pounds. So go back to your chart if you need to figure out tons and pounds. That's a weight. So go on to the weight. 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. So 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. I put pounds on the bottom, so we will keep pounds on the bottom. And I don't know my pounds there, so I'm going to put X pounds. And then tons in the top. So that's going to be 1 ton to 6 tons. And then multiplicative factor, 1 times 6 is 6. So 2,000 times 6 is going to be 12,000. So a male Asian elephant weighing 6 tons would weigh 12,000 pounds. Ron was making 1,175 milliliters of a punch that mixes lemonade and juice. He already added 675 milliliters of lemonade. How many liters of orange juice should he add? Set up and solve using equivalent ratios. So if you notice, my 2 different ratios here are milliliters and liters. I need to go look at my conversion ratio for milliliters and liters. And right here, 1,000 milliliters is 1 liter. Okay, now let's read the question and make sure we understand it. Well, Ron was making 1,175 milliliters of punch. He already added 675 milliliters of lemonade, and we want to know how many liters of orange juice. Let's first figure out how many milliliters of orange juice he added, because this is in milliliters and this is in milliliters. So if I take 1,175 and I subtract 675, that gives me 500. So he needs to add 500 milliliters of lemonade, and that is how many liters? Notice that I have my milliliters on top and my liters here on the bottom. So the multiplicative factor, 1,000 times what is 500? That's actually going to be times by a half or divided by 2. So 1 liter times by a half. So he needs to add 1/2 liter of orange juice. Jen has to wear her braces for 3 years. She wants to make a countdown chart to be able to mark off every day until she gets them off. How many days will she need to include on her chart? I'm converting years to days. So I need to figure out the relationship between years and days. You can look at your conversion chart, or you may already know that 365 days is in 1 year. If you don't know, it's on the conversion chart. So there's my conversion. We want to figure out 3 years, so I put years on the bottom, so we will keep years on the bottom. And then I put days on top, so we will keep days on top. That's what I don't know is my days. My multiplicative factor, 1 times 3 is 3. So 365 times 3 is 1,095 days on her chart. Practice. Set up and solve equivalent ratios to convert the following units. Tom went to the store to buy 3 gallons of chocolate milk. However, they were all out of gallons and only had quarts. How many quarts should he buy to have 3 gallons? So my conversion units are gallons and quarts. So we can go back and check the relationship between gallons and quarts, and that is a volume right here. 1 gallon is 4 quarts. To my conversion ratio, I put gallon on top, quarts on the bottom. Again, you can flip it as long as you're consistent with where you put your units. Since I put quarts on the bottom, I will keep quarts on the bottom. I want to figure out how many quarts, so X quarts. I put gallons on top, so we will keep gallons on top. 1 gallon, and I want to figure out 3 gallons. My multiplicative factor, 1 times what is 3? That's going to be times 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. So he should buy 12 quarts if he wants 3 gallons of chocolate milk. Rachel's new baby sister weighs 3,500 grams. How much did she weigh in kilograms? So my units that I am converting are grams to kilograms. So you can go check that on the conversion chart. 1 kilogram is equal to 1,000 grams. We'll just simplify those with kg and g. So that's my conversion ratio. I put kilograms on top. We will keep kilograms on top. And we don't know what the kilograms is, so it's X kilograms. I put grams on bottom. We will keep grams on bottom. And it is 3,500 grams. The multiplicative factor is 1,000 times what is 3,500, and that's going to be multiplied by 3.5. Again, if you don't know that, you can always divide. And so I'll multiply the top by the same, 3.5. So that gives me 1 times 3.5, which is 3.5 kilograms. Tyler's soccer coach wants them to drink at least 64 ounces of water a day. How many cups of water should Tyler be drinking every day? So I'm converting ounces and cups. I'm looking for ounces and cup, which is volume. So 1 cup is 8 ounces. That's my conversion ratio. Put cups on top, so I will keep cups on top. If you put cups on bottom, you keep your cups on the bottom. But 1 cup, and I don't know how many cups, so we'll put X cups. And then my ounces on bottom, so I will keep my ounces on bottom, 8 ounces, and then I want that to be 64 ounces. So my multiplicative factor is 8 times what is 64, and that's 8. So 1 times 8 is 8, so he should be drinking 8 cups. Charlotte needs 90 inches of ribbon for a costume she is making. How many yards of ribbon does she need? My units will be inches and yards. 1 yard is 36 inches. It's my conversion ratio. And I put inches on the bottom, so we will keep inches on the bottom. And 36 inches will need to be 90 inches. And I put yards on top, so that needs to stay yards. 1 yard, and I don't know how many yards, so X yards. And so I got to figure out 36 times what is 90. If you don't know what 36 times what is 90, then you can divide 90 divided by 36, and that will give you 2.5. So I'm going to multiply by 2.5, and then the top by 2.5. So 1 times 2.5 is 2.5, so that will be 2.5 yards. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. Thank you.